I'm going to shock you. Hillary Clinton would be, without a doubt, hands down, the absolute best CEO of a public company. Ruthless, profit-driven, and all about the money.
Democratic presidential frontrunner Hillary Clinton might be flip-flopping regarding her position on super PACs. While in California today, Mrs. Clinton is expected to woo support from the super PAC Priorities USA. At first, she refrained from endorsing the group's efforts on her behalf, but Mrs. Clinton will now meet personally with donors to the group during her trip to California, according to the New York Times. And here now with reaction, we have Stephen Sigmund, the executive director of the Global Gateway Alliance, and Lee Carter, partner with Ms. Lansky and Partners. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So outside groups such as Priorities USA are allowed to raise unlimited funds for campaigns under the Citizens United decision. But the New York Times notes, quote, "This is the first time a Democratic presidential candidate has fully embraced these independent groups." The Times going on to say that Mrs. Clinton had planned to raise money for this super PAC all along, but, quote, initially delayed doing so in part because of her pledge to make campaign finance reform a critical issue. So, Lee, is this a flip-flop?
I think it is. I mean, the bottom line here is Hillary went out with a very strong message, and she said, everyday Americans should have a champion, and I'm going to be that champion. So she's running around this idea of being an everyday American, and yet, at the same time, she's got this symbol of being a big politician. And she's contradicting that directly by going and meeting with a super PAC right now. I mean, Obama also had supported the super PAC, he just didn't meet with them. So I think that there's some contradictions that people are seeing, and it's not going to be working to her favor right now.
So what am I talking about? I'm talking about influence peddling on a global scale and the setting of American foreign policy to coincide with the flow of hundreds of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation and millions directly to Bill Clinton and ultimately Hillary in speaking fees. Exhibit 1. Bill takes a plane ride to Kazakhstan with a Canadian who wants to buy uranium. Now, the president of Kazakhstan is a human rights violator. But Bill actually praises his human rights record and then expresses support for that president to lead an international elections monitoring group. Crazy, because that Kazakh president is accused of rigging his own elections. But back to the deal. Now, Kazakhstan approves the sale of uranium to Bill's flying buddy. And months later, the Clinton Foundation gets a $31.3 million donation from the Canadian, which was a secret and not disclosed by the Clintons until the Canadian government outed it. Now, the Canadian wants to sell his uranium business to Russia. Enter the Clintons. The State Department approval is needed and granted. Bill gets a $500,000 speaking fee, and Russia now controls 20% of the U.S. uranium production, a national strategic asset. That very same Russian company, Uranium One, made a $2.35 million contribution to the Clinton Foundation, not disclosed by the Clintons.
A native New Yorker who's shaking up the establishment, not Donald Trump, but Bernie Sanders. Is he a serious threat to Hillary Clinton?
Not in the sense of her getting the nomination. He is a serious threat to basically make people realize there's some vulnerability to her and that some other challenger, like the junior senator from Massachusetts, could give her a real run. But he's not going to be able to take the Democrats' organization or the Democrat coalition and do well. But there is a protest side to him, and he basically is tapping in, just as Trump is on the Republican side, into this liberal, I don't like the establishment, I don't like Hillary type thing. And that's, maybe 20%, which is a significant portion of the vote.
There's only 8 behind in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire or Iowa are both places. Now, if you can put an organization together in Iowa, which is all about a caucus, it doesn't do any good to have big crowds if they don't turn out on
Right.
caucus night.
Well, she came in third last time in Iowa.
Yeah,
She's not very
and just a
strong
few
out there.
weeks before she ended up coming in third, she was ahead by 8,
Right.
I think, over Obama, and she was only half a percentage point ahead of Edwards. So that was...
Well, where are you at on Bernie Sanders?
I'm pro Bernie's existence in this race. I think it's great to hear his ideas.
Are you pro
I'm not.
Are you pro
I am.
Hillary?
I am.
So
I think.
Are you worried that he's dragging Hillary to the left?
I'm worried insofar as I think that she's showing she's putting out a series of policies, especially on the economy, that I don't think are true Clintonian policies, because she's trying to accommodate what's happening. And I think then people are misunderstanding what a Clinton presidency would look like. And I think that that is a problem, because I think, elections are won in the middle, and that's actually where she shines, and that's where she is. But this is pulling her to the side. And I think that she's being forced in certain ways to say some things that I don't think she would naturally. Like, I don't know if she'd go after the sharing economy in the same way. I don't think that she would go after the banks in the same way. She needs those banks. They're gonna fund her super PAC. And talking about Bernie Sanders, yeah, the people need to turn out, but he doesn't have enough money to do this. He's done well. He raised $15 million, I think, from even smaller donations than Obama got. But I mean, $15 million isn't going to win you a presidency.
As president, Richard Nixon recorded 3,700 hours of tapes, of which 18.5 minutes, less than 1% of the total, were erased by a culprit never identified. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton sent or received on her private server 63,000 emails, of which she tells us she herself erased 30,000, nearly half the total. The comparisons come now from individuals not typically associated with vast right-wing conspiracies.
You've got a massive amount of data. It, in a way, reminds me of the Nixon tapes, thousands of hours of secretly recorded conversations that Nixon thought were exclusively his.
It's an interesting analogy, because President Nixon acted as if he was never in trouble. He was never going to be investigated. He was never going to be caught. And P.S., those tapes, they belong to me. They don't belong to the government. Does that sound familiar?
As a young lawyer, Clinton served on the House Judiciary Committee that recommended the impeachment of President Nixon. Clinton has written about listening to the so-called tape of tapes, on which Nixon could be heard listening to and commenting on earlier tapes. It's likely Clinton made no recordings when she reviewed her own emails and deleted half of them.
Well, I'm not a crook.
I will do my part to provide transparency to Americans.
Political cartoonists are also finding the comparison irresistible, yet the outside the cartoon panel thinker will ask whether Mrs. Clinton shouldn't aspire to be compared to Mr. Nixon. And Nixon's 2 presidential victories, one a historic landslide, offer the only modern precedent for what Hillary Clinton is attempting, namely to capture the White House after a highly polarizing 20-year career on the national stage.
Secretary Clinton, you're blaming this on the process and saying this is just the way it goes. Is it leadership about taking responsibility?
Well, I do take, look, and I take responsibility. Look, and I just told Jeff, in retrospect, this didn't turn out to be convenient at all. And I regret that this has become such a cause célèbre. But that does not change the facts. And no matter what anybody tries to say, the facts are stubborn.
So you're saying that the FBI believes that you tried to wipe the entire server. Did you try to wipe the entire, so that there be no email, no personal, no official, wipe the whole thing?
Well, my personal emails are my personal business.
Right. You tried to wipe the whole server.
I'm not, I have no idea. That's why we turned it over.
You said you were in charge of it. You were the official in charge. Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something?
No. Well, you know how it works digitally. Did you try to wipe the whole server?
I don't know how it works digitally at all. I do not have any.
You did not try.
Ed, I know you want to make a point, and I can just repeat what I have said. Thank you all very much.
That this issue isn't going to go away for the remainder of your campaign?
Nobody talks to me about it. Other than you guys.
I just love watching Hillary Clinton squirm like a worm on a hook in the way that she's doing. There's nothing more entertaining. She looks like she's in a prison jumpsuit, which makes this even better. It's all orange. And on top of everything else, this woman gives the American people every day less reason to trust her. I don't think this is funny. I don't think that the 4 soldiers that died in Benghazi think it's funny. If one email, one of the 30,000 has one fact that can give us more information on what happened in Libya, this is, I mean, it's unbelievably disrespectful. And in all seriousness, I can't believe she's going to be the nominee.
Well, there you go.
Maybe
so,
not.
Maybe
not.
And
Yes.
maybe not with the fallout from this and other things. And also, like you said, with the Benghazi investigation going on, and Trey Gowdy's not giving up on that. Juan, even people that are playing for her team, for her side, are having a problem with this.
Well, I think that's what you see in the poll. I think it says 58% think that she lied about this. And, of course, everybody says, look, she could have dealt with this earlier. First of all, she should not have been using a personal server. By the way, I think you're wrong. I think other people have done it. We know Governor Bush did it when he was governor. We know Marco Rubio did it when he was the head of the House in Florida. We know Scott Walker did it as governor.
I'm certainly well aware of the classification requirements and did not send classified material. I never sent classified material on my email, and I never received any that was marked classified. I did not send classified material, and I did not receive any material that was marked or designated classified.
But despite her repeated denials, we now know classified material was sent and received on Hillary Clinton's, private server.
I really
Reuters
can't believe how much hyperbole is being expended over a big nothing. What is the crime that we're talking about here? I want to know.
I will save you to the
save
end.
Me till the
yeah,
end.
okay.
I really think you should save me till last.
See, but you can't help yourself, Geraldo.
I can't.
Republicans, unfortunately.
Because this is the biggest noise about nothing that I ever heard.
Is that true?
Wow.
Tucker, what's the crime?
Hillary Clinton, desperate to get her email scandal out of the news, so she came up with something else to make the headlines. This.
Now, extreme views about women, we expect that from some of the terrorist groups. We expect that from people who don't want to live in the modern world. But it's a little hard to take coming from Republicans who want to be the president of the United States. Yet they espouse out-of-date and out-of-touch policies. They are dead wrong for 21st century America.
Were you aware that your husband wanted to give paid speeches to repressive regimes like North Korea? Do you have any comment on these new emails that have raised questions about conflict of interest involving your aide, Huma Abedin? And finally, I wonder if you said there's nothing unique about this situation. You've said that before. Can you name one other cabinet secretary who had their own server?
Well, let me answer one of your questions because I think that's what you are entitled to. Any request that my husband received to be sent to the State Department, to be vetted. So it didn't matter where it was coming from.
Ed, you are entitled to as much time as you'd like to respond to all of that.
Well, thank you.
Lots of going on, and you're there at the DNC meeting. Catch us up on the day.
Well, look, Hillary Clinton has a mission here, and that ties into her answer to me, which is, if you read the New York Times today, it's Democrats, not Republicans, who are registering their frustration that she as the candidate and her team around her have just been wallowing this email thing and not dealing with it head on. Remember the jokes about Snapchat, the joke to me last week in Las Vegas about using a towel to wipe the server. A lot of Democrats, again, not her Republican critics, are saying those jokes fell flat, that the candidate didn't take it seriously. And so I think you heard in her answer, her trying maybe to be a little more combative with me and the press, trying to go on offense, not just sit back on defense. Frankly, that is also why she went after Republicans and threw out this idea yesterday that you played, comparing them to terrorists. She wants to get on offense. She's frankly tired of being on defense. But I do think that at one point in the news conference earlier, before my questions, she said something about how she's not frustrated with these questions. She's willing to answer them. And then a moment or two later tells me, you know, you're entitled to one question. That sounded like frustration and defensiveness, and so it's a bit of a mixed message. You know, I did try. One of the questions that I asked her was about Bill Clinton's speeches, which he was trying to justify, at least his representatives, and trying to convince the State Department to let him give these speeches tied to North Korea and the Democratic Republic of Congo, these repressive regimes, on the notion that, look, the money's not going to go in his pocket. It's going to go to charity. It's going to go to the Clinton Foundation. One of the speeches was to the tune of $650,000. So this is big money from entities tied to these very questionable nations, obviously. And so he was trying to tie it up in charity. So frankly, I'm just saying I was trying to get an answer from her. She didn't want to answer that. I agree with you. It may be low-hanging fruit, but frankly, there are not a lot of reporters out here asking Hillary Clinton about the Clinton Foundation. Today, at least, I was the only one who tried.
You know, after months of trying to minimize the scandal surrounding her use of the private email account in that server in her house during her time as Secretary of State, Mrs. Clinton is changing course now amid those sinking poll numbers and, of course, the growing criticism over her handling of the entire controversy. The Democratic presidential candidate now apologizing.
I should have used two accounts, one for personal, one for work-related emails. That was a mistake. I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility. And I'm trying to be as transparent as I possibly can to not only release 55,000 pages of my emails, turn over my server, but I am looking forward, finally, to testifying before Congress.
It was a mistake. You take responsibility. Hillary, You took responsibility for Benghazi. Nothing happened. And what difference did that make? And you're sorry because you used 2 emails? That's not the point. It's using a private server. By doing so, you compromise classified and top secret information. Or are you sorry because you got caught?
In the Factor follow-up segment, the troubles just won't go away for Hillary Clinton. A new CNN poll shows Clinton with just 37% support in the Democratic primary, a 10-point drop from August, with Bernie Sanders pretty much holding his own and non-candidate Joe Biden gaining ground. And the State Department reportedly opened up a criminal investigation into Clinton campaign bigwig Huma Abedin for alleged embezzlement, but that went nowhere. Joining us now from Washington, Ed Henry, who covers the Hillary campaign for Fox News, and they are not happy with Ed. So, Eddie, what did you do this time?
Well, it's just interesting. Late this week, Hillary Clinton had a couple of events, one in Ohio, one in Wisconsin. And at the first one, I was there in Columbus, right down the street, by the way, from Ohio State, with tens of thousands of college students. I've been to Columbus many times with President Obama as president, as a candidate, and he always gets thousands of people because you've got a lot of students excited about Democratic candidates for president. And Hillary Clinton only had a few hundred people in Columbus. It was an event, Women for Hillary, and so she's trying to show strength. And yet this was a pretty sparse crowd. The room was about half full. So I posted some pictures you probably see on Twitter. The campaign wasn't happy. They started posting pictures of their own, saying, look, the room is more full on this side. Then later in the day in Wisconsin, they said that the room was so packed that there was an overflow crowd, and Hillary Clinton had to go greet the overflow. My point is, it's interesting, regardless of the numbers, that the Clinton camp is so much on defense right now that they're on social media saying, well, our second event had a lot more people. And Hillary Clinton races to the overflow room to say, I'm so excited there's more people. She's the front runner. She should be getting a lot more people right now. I mean, look at the rallies Bernie Sanders has with thousands and thousands of people.
Stadiums. It's just you're going to get in trouble at but one time she told you you're only entitled to one question.
Ed Klein is the author of a brand new book. It's called Unlikable: The Problem with Hillary. He joins us live here in our New York studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Okay, so the Clintons have known Steven Spielberg for a long time. Bill felt that she just was icy and cold, needed to warm up. They called Steven Spielberg.
Yes, and, you know, Steven Spielberg has been, as you just said, their friend for a long time. When she ran for Senate, she spent days and days at his apartment in Trump Tower. She asked for a private elevator, by the way, and they didn't give it to her in Trump Tower. And they got in touch with Spielberg. He provided acting coaches for her. And she set up a camera in her den in Chappaqua.
Did she want to do this?
She hated the idea. She said, why should I, who get $300,000 a speech, listen to some Hollywood schmucks about how I should do this?
Hillary Clinton is going after House Republicans, investigating her email issues. This comes as the candidate is still raking in campaign donations, but not enough to escape an unexpectedly fierce challenge from her left. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has that story tonight.
Hillary Clinton is feeling the burn, checkmated by Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders on fundraising. From July to September, Clinton raised a record $28 million, yet Sanders nearly matched that with $26 million, despite holding just 5 fundraisers compared to Clinton's 58 fundraisers. So Clinton is burning more cash on overhead, a repeat of 2008, when her supposed money advantage over then-Senator Barack Obama evaporated. Sanders is shattering records too, reaching at least 1 million online contributions months ahead of when Obama did. And now one of the president's top advisors, Valerie Jarrett, is raising more doubts about Clinton's email.
Weren't there guidelines from the White House to all cabinet secretaries?
Well, yes, there were.
To use government
absolutely.
email.
We feel, obviously, we want to make sure that we preserve all government records, and so there was guidance given that government business should be done on government emails, and that if you did use a private email, that it should be turned over. That's what she's doing.
Here's a sample of some of the best remarks from last night.
You know, everybody on this stage has changed a position or two. We've been around a cumulative quite some period of time. You know, we know that if you are learning, you're going to change your position. I never took a position on Keystone until I took a position on Keystone.
Let me say something that may not be great politics, but I think the Secretary is right. And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too. Me too.
You know?
Let's just take a minute here and point out that this committee is basically an arm of the Republican National Committee. It is a partisan vehicle, as admitted by the House Republican Majority Leader, Mr. McCarthy, to drive down my poll numbers. Big surprise. And that's what they have attempted to do. I am still standing.
I am still standing. Another key line from Hillary Clinton, despite the attacks. Interesting, though, again, this may help her lock up the nomination. But those questions, just pushing back on the Benghazi committee with that claim of partisanship, is not going to resonate necessarily with Republicans and independent voters in a general election. On top of that, she doubled down on some of the flip-flops to the left that, again, help her lock up the nomination, may make it a lot more difficult for her in a general election.
I know Bernie Sanders said that, quote, the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails. But there are a lot of people who are not.
Well,
including FBI officials.
Remember when Hillary Clinton was asked which enemy she was most proud of at the Democratic debate?
well, in addition to the NRA, the health insurance companies, the drug companies, the Iranians, probably the Republicans.
Well, and finally, Clinton and Biden seem to have very different accounts of who supported the bin Laden raid.
It was a really tough decision to advise on because, you know, we didn't have the smoking gun. I was one who recommended to the president that he go ahead, and his advisors were split.
There were only two people who were definitive and were absolutely certain. Leon Panetta said go, and Bob Gates, who's already publicly said this, said don't go. I told him my opinion, that I thought he should go, but follow his own instincts.
And, of course, much has been written about Joe flip-flopping on that raid. But pictured right there, the moment bin Laden was taken out, there's Biden on the left, flanked by President Obama, Hillary on the right, flanked by Robert Gates. An amazing photo.
Regardless of where he ranked in the order of advisors, it is undisputed that a significant number of your emails were to or from a Sidney Blumenthal. Did the president know that Mr. Blumenthal was advising you?
He wasn't advising me. And, you know,
Did he know
Mr. Chairman,
that he was your most prolific emailer that we have found on the subjects of Libya and Benghazi?
That's because I didn't do most of my work
That's
about
fair.
Libya on
I'm
email.
not challenging that, Madam Secretary. I am not challenging that. My question to you is, did the president, did he know that he was advising you?
He was not advising me, and I have no reason to have ever mentioned that or know that the president knew that.
She went on to say that she used some of those emails and the memos that he sent on, took his name off of it, and circulated it in intel circles and at the White House.
Right. Well, most Americans don't know who Sid Blumenthal is. We've discussed these very emails here in the last couple weeks, and we've talked about how clear it is that he's a friend. The emails are solicited. There's a back and forth. There's 500 or more of them. She's very encouraging and enthusiastic. He gives her all kinds of advice, disparages other people, and it's a free-flowing exchange, and they're in constant contact. I'm on a plane now. I'll talk to you as soon as I get off. What she did today was brilliant, and she was an impeccable witness because there are no sound bites where she implodes. She both said he was not an advisor, and in turn said sometimes the information was so valuable she thought the ambassador in Libya should have it to read and respond to. So she never, it was the same with the discussion about the video. Why did you try out the video line? She managed to never become defensive. She was masterful. And that's why there's no soundbite where she freaks out and gives. If it ends up that she's perjured herself and we're only halfway through this, fine, we'll find that out tomorrow. Her performance right now is better than the Democrats on that committee and better than the Republicans.
Well, the State Department releasing a new batch of Hillary Clinton's emails. It reportedly contains the highest rate of classified information yet. According to a Washington Times analysis, 266 messages, or 1 out of every 16, have information marked as confidential. In the meantime, McClatchy is reporting the FBI is under pressure to act quickly when it comes to the investigation into her email scandal. But there are reportedly some doubts that Hillary will ever face criminal charges. One national security attorney telling McClatchy, quote, "She's too big to jail." And another lawyer saying, quote, "It's very hard for the government to prove what they have to prove to get a conviction."
In the Impact segment tonight, all the polls say Hillary Clinton's pretty much a lock for the Democratic presidential nomination. But one thing may stand in her way: an FBI investigation into alleged misuse of emails during her tenure as Secretary of State.
Hillary Clinton's campaign is trying to get an early advantage in the delegate count months before the first voters decide the Democratic nominee. Clinton is locking up public support from half of the Democratic insiders who cast ballots at the party's national convention. Now, this latest move follows the former Secretary of State getting a boost in the polls ahead of rivals Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley. Here to weigh in is Professor Jeannie Zaino from Iona College and GOP communications specialist TJ McCormick. Welcome to you both.
Thanks.
Okay, so TJ, the Clinton camp growing more and more confident that they've got this locked up. It seems so, right?
Oh, I would, yeah. And listen, I would be determined to lock up whatever I could lock up before, if I was waiting out an FBI report on my on my dealings, I'd really like to lock up as much as I could before I got locked up. I'm sorry, I couldn't let it go.
Hillary Clinton faced a real dilemma yesterday with the Paris attacks and the debate over Syrian refugees dominating the campaign now, and so many Republican candidates ripping President Obama's policy. She had to come out and make a statement. She did a speech before the Council on Foreign Relations. But while she needed to take a strong stand, this former Secretary of State did not want to put too much distance between herself and the president she served. So one of the things that she did was to talk about how she thinks there should be a no-fly zone in Syria enforced by the U.S. That goes further than the president has wanted. But she also said no ground troops in Syria. And even if the U.S. were to be attacked again by the terrorists, she would still not favor sending ground troops to the Middle East.
In the Impact segment tonight, Hillary Clinton getting in hot water with the far left. Earlier this month, Hillary Clinton sparked outrage among immigration activists after saying this to supporters in New Hampshire.
Well, look, I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. And I do think you have to control your borders.
Hillary officially apologized yesterday for using the phrase illegal immigrants, but now she's in even more trouble after skipping a candidate forum hosted by radical left group MoveOn.org. Here to tell us what's going on from West Palm Beach, Ed Henry, who's covering the Hillary campaign. Ed, somebody's in trouble with the far left.
I think, look, she called it what it is, illegal immigration. But when you use the phrase illegal immigrants on the left, it's a pejorative. It's an insult. And the campaigns of Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders had noted that Hillary Clinton was under pressure. And so what happens? The PC police intervenes, basically, and she's got to fix it. She's still far ahead of Bernie Sanders, far ahead of Martin O'Malley. She's likely to win the Democratic nomination, but it's another example how, no matter what she does, the left is still not completely happy.
I get accused of being kind of moderate and center. I plead guilty.
What's the difference between a socialist and a Democrat?
I can tell you what I am. I am a progressive Democrat. I'm a progressive Democrat
that different than a socialist?
Who likes to get things done and who believes that we are better off in this country when we're trying to solve problems together, getting people to work together.
Obviously, Mrs. Clinton dodged the question about socialism, but I can tell you this. She is not a socialist. Everybody knows the Clintons live very well with 2 lavish homes, private jet flights, and an enormous income stream. Speeches and the Clinton Foundation afford Bill and Hillary an affluent lifestyle, which they embrace. Meantime, Mrs. Clinton's competition, Bernie Sanders, really is a hardcore socialist. He doesn't live high at all. He walks the walk.
Good evening, Brett. This is escalating. And start with Hillary Clinton accusing Donald Trump of sexism. Trump then said Bill Clinton's personal scandals are fair game. And Hillary Clinton recently said every survivor of sexual assault has the right to be heard and believed. So now Juanita Broderick, who long ago accused the former president of rape, has joined Twitter and said, quote, "I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, Arkansas Attorney General, raped me and Hillary tried to silence me. I am now 73. It never goes away," which adds tonight to mounting problems for the Clinton campaign. As the campaign for the Democratic nomination moves west, frontrunner Hillary Clinton tried to project confidence today in California and last night in Nevada.
And the enthusiasm is just building. I'm thrilled by today and what I'm hearing from my team on the ground.
Except in Nevada, the third state in line after Iowa and New Hampshire, momentum is shifting to Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, who has hired twice as many paid staffers there, 40 to 22, according to Politico, and has opened 9 field offices in the state compared to Clinton's 7.
I think our message that it is just too late for establishment politics and economics is resonating, and I feel really good as I go around the state of Nevada.
Despite Clinton raising $112 million, she's worried about a surging Sanders. Her campaign manager, Robbie Mook, sent out an urgent fundraising appeal marked nervous. Mook writing, quote, "Now the other shoe has dropped. I just found out that he's outspending us on TV advertising in Iowa and New Hampshire. Adding more TV ads just isn't in our budget. We're locked into spending critical funds on organizing and field offices. And if we cut into that budget, we'll lose what this campaign is all about."
Uh-oh, for Secretary Clinton. A newly released Hillary Clinton email raising more questions for Secretary Clinton. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harris is here. Catherine.
Well, the information we have, Greta, that comes through 3 separate intelligence sources is that, in fact, the FBI investigation has expanded. So the first line or the first track is about the classified information that was found on her personal server that she used to do government business. And the second is that it looks at possible violations of public corruption laws. In this case, whether people who donated to the Clinton Foundation received preferential treatment in terms of access and the granting of State Department.
With the fate of Hillary Clinton's campaign hanging in part on whether the Obama administration presses criminal charges over her email, Vice President Joe Biden keeps tweaking Clinton and praising Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders for highlighting income inequality.
It's relatively new for Hillary to talk about that. Hillary's focus has been on other things up to now, and that's been Bernie's. No one questions Bernie's authenticity on those issues.
When Biden clarified, saying he meant Clinton had been focused on foreign policy, he built up Bernie.
Bernie is pushing the envelope on this.
Out of the blue today, Clinton in Iowa touted her fights against, yes, income inequality and big paychecks on Wall Street.
So don't talk to me about standing up to corporate interests and big powers. I've got the scars to show for it.
Clinton's attacks are sharpening as she struggles to energize the left. Liberal advocacy group MoveOn.org, which was created to shield Bill Clinton from impeachment, today endorsed Sanders. As a new Monmouth University poll found, Sanders winning by 14 points in New Hampshire. The same poll in November had Clinton winning by 3 points.
Becoming a grandmother only kind of further deepened my mother's commitment to the work that clearly she's been called to her whole professional life.
Sanders is not buying that softer image. He told reporters he's under attack because Clinton is in trouble.